We did it, Meg. We're back.
Hey.
What's up? Anything? No, nothing?
Oh.
Nothing's up?
Sorry, I got distracted by
There's a lot up.
something.
You're distracted?
There's a bug.
There's lots of bugs. We're live from the Beard Laws mobile studio. For those that are just listening, the voice you're hearing, it's me. It's Matt, and that's Meg over there. What's up, Meg?
Hey, I'm Meg.
She's being distracted
It's
and
me.
stuff. Look, I added an arm to our mobile studio.
Nice.
There's a very solid chance it's going to fall, and I do apologize, but I'll catch it, and then we'll talk into it. And, I don't have this light on. I thought Meg would talk while I turned the light on, but she stared at me like, whoa, that's a light. That gives us so much more light. I don't even know if it did anything.
Sorry about that.
Did? You were just in awe.
Yeah, this one too.
Yeah, no, it's hot in the mobile studio. We decided to come out here and record, and everybody in like southern states, it's hot. Oh, what is it, like 75? Yeah, 75 to us is hot because like at night it still gets 40-ish. And when it gets this hot, we sweat. Our blood, we're built different. But either way, we can't thank you enough. Part of the Beard Laws studio, which is home to not only the Your Town podcast, which you have the pleasure or displeasure of listening to right now, but also the Stay Out of My Fridge podcast, which used to be the Beard Laws podcast. We also have the Passball podcast. We have the Body Wrong podcast. We have the Windbag Whisperers, which they're super excited to potentially record something, and all sorts of stuff. That One Story podcast, and just some good stuff. Super excited for that. But either way, we just had one of our kids go to prom, Meg.
We did.
A little bittersweet moment.
A little milestone I wasn't ready for.
Definitely wasn't ready, but I wanted to do this one because prom is fresh on our brain, and it was mentioned throughout the Beard Laws studio. And two, super thankful that this didn't happen to anybody that attended prom. This is obviously a very dark story that does have something for prom that was back in the 80s, and it potentially is a different state that isn't on the Your Town map. If you want to know what we're talking about, check out the Your Town interactive map. It's not very interactive, that's the wrong word, but it's the map on yourtown.com that has pretty close to every location that we do. I drop a little red kind of, what is it, like a pin?
Yeah.
Drop a little red push pin on each location where we do an episode. And this one is out of Indiana, the Hoosiers. A lot of good stuff in Indiana. This isn't one of them. But super excited to jump into this one. I'm going to do the intro. If I was prepared, do you think we should do it, Meg?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's do it when?
Right now.
Okay. What an intro. Hopefully it worked. And again, if you guys are seeing me look over this direction, I'm staring at the beautiful Meg.
Hey. What would you do if I said no?
To what?
To playing the intro.
I just wouldn't do it.
Huh. Okay.
What's the old saying? Happy wife, happy life. And if the wife doesn't want the intro, there's no intro. And then if the viewers, they comment like, boo, Meg, we want the intro, then that's on you. I wouldn't let them talk.
I like the intro, though.
It's pretty good. We did make it. But again, I'm staring this way at Meg, trying not to be rude in this conversation. So there we go. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, again, something a little bit dark. Prom night murders. It's a case that really shook a small Indiana community to its core. It's the story of Jeff Pelly and the tragic events that happened in April 29th, 1989. And the story begins in Lakeville, Indiana, which sounds like a very nice, pleasant place. Quiet, close-knit town, where everyone knows each other. Seems pretty familiar, right? The Pellies were a very prominent family in the community. Bob Pelly was the pastor of the Olive Branch Church of the United Brethren in Christ. His wife, Dawn, and their children, including Jeff, were well regarded, but behind closed doors, tension simmers. Bob Pelly was known to be a very strict disciplinarian, especially with his 17-year-old son, Jeff. According to his friends and acquaintances, Jeff had clashed with his father numerous times over, typical teenage issues, but there was an underlying tension about Jeff's activities and friends. So it seems like a normal upbringing in the 80s.
Normal teenage
Strict parents,
relationship.
teenagers doing teenage stuff that really doesn't really settle well with dad, especially a dad, the man of God, who is a pastor at a church. Have to imagine that is more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
April 29th, 1989. I was 4, Meg.
I was
four.
Probably in first grade.
4 years old. Yeah, you were what? 6? 5? 6? You were 6. No, you were 5.
No, I would have been 5.
You're 5. All right. So we're young
For a few
bucks.
more months.
And I don't remember this story, thankfully, because I didn't check the news, especially as a 4-year-old, and I don't remember really anything at 4. I don't even remember my prom barely, and that was like 22, 23 years ago, let alone this. The Lakeville was buzzing with excitement, as I think a lot of small town communities really do around prom. I mean, we went through this yesterday. There was a lot of community members, a lot of parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends. They're all excited to see people that they like, that they love, dressed up as if they were going to a potential wedding. Just lots of smiles.
A lot of pictures.
A lot of pictures. A lot of family. And of course, being a small town, there's always that one idiot. We were sitting there, and there was somebody in a UTV ripping around like a knucklehead. Almost flipped it. I didn't see it, but I was hearing that it was pretty close. But either way, the buzz is buzzing. And hopefully no pun intended. But we're in Indiana. High school is prepping for their prom. Jeff Pelly was excited too. He planned to attend the prom with his girlfriend, Darla, and all of their friends, followed by an after party at a nearby amusement park. How fun would that be?
Be pretty fun.
Would be pretty fun. And I thought it was a cool thing in the community that our kiddo went to prom. They did a cool thing, which isn't a new thing for Meg, but they had an after party as well. And obviously they did this in the 80s in Indiana. My school, we didn't have one. You went to prom, see you later. Was there potentially parties after? Allegedly, and you'll never hear about it. But it was a really cool thing. They bussed the kids to a nice safe spot, and they had all these activities and some stuff planned. First time I've ever seen something like that. I thought it was awesome.
I've always done it.
Yeah.
Even when I was in school, we did it.
It was
like a little carnival.
Yeah.
And you win tickets, and you put your tickets in for prizes, potential win.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, they draw the prizes.
It's pretty
Music, activities to do, photo booths.
It's awesome.
Food.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a brilliant idea to prevent terrible things. This is a terrible thing. We might as well start to get in there because obviously they're excited. The town is buzzing. The amusement park, they're all excited. But unfortunately, something sinister was brewing beneath the surface. Maybe brewing's not the right word because I don't think there was any booze involved, thankfully. But it was the 80s, maybe. Probably a lot of cigarettes, too. A lot of smokers back then. Earlier that day, Bob and Jeff, they got into an argument. Pretty typical of this duo. But according to investigators, the disagreement was about Jeff's car privileges, which Bob revoked. Robert had restricted his son's activities on prom night because he was being punished for some CDs and money that Jeff was actually caught stealing from a nearby home. For anybody that doesn't know, CD is a compact disc. It was a way that we used to put music onto a CD and listen to music before you could just press lovely streaming services like Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and all of the ones that the Yorktown podcast is on. You had to put it on. Could you imagine having to put a podcast on a CD and trying to get people to listen to it? Do you think we should? Is anybody else doing that?
Let's do cassette tape. Let's get even further back.
The Yorktown cassette tape.
Yeah.
Okay, you heard it. Comment if you would buy the Yorktown cassette tape, and we will try to make this happen. Can't be.
Compilation.
But while you do that, check out the Patreon that doesn't exist because we're going to need some money. But yeah, so he stole some CDs and some potential money from a nearby place. And apparently, Robert said Pelly, Jeff there, would be unable to attend after school prom activities, and he had to be dropped off to prom if he wanted to go at all. And I have to imagine as a 17-year-old, potentially if it's your junior prom, having to be dropped off by dad, the pastor, wouldn't be a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get to prom? Did you have anything cool like a limo, a bus? Did you get dropped off? Did you go with the date?
No, we had a minivan and a station wagon.
Yeah. I wonder
Yeah.
if limos were a thing back then.
I feel like there's been people that had limos.
I didn't see it. I was very surprised. That was the one thing that stuck out to me because any of the proms that I attended or heard of, like people attending, there was a lot of limos. It was really big in the early 2000s. I didn't see anybody
Hmm.
get dropped off in a limo at this said prom. I did see some people roll up, some four wheelers with some tight jeans, a couple of shirts, and a big old belt buckle.
Oh.
Their hair looked good even with a helmet on.
Yeah.
I was impressed.
There was a classic car. That was kind of cool.
But that wasn't an older gentleman was driving it.
It was a grandpa.
Oh, it was a grandpa.
Of one of the
Gotcha.
attendees.
I like that.
Yeah.
One of the coolest one is my cousin's daughter, still a cousin. She went to prom and got dropped off in a milk truck and then a fire truck, right?
The fire truck was cool, yeah.
Fire truck's pretty cool. That's an entrance. So if anybody's listening looking for some prom tips, you found the wrong guy. But we'll point you in the right direction for some people that might be able to give you some good ideas.
I also feel like limos aren't that big of a thing where I'm from, is because most of the houses are within like a mile of the school. It's kind of a lot to spend to drive for 30 seconds.
Yeah, but the whole thing was you get in a limo, you guys all go out to eat, you go somewhere, take pictures, drive around in the limo for a little bit, maybe have a beverage if you have more like a really kind of, which you would potentially say cool, but turns out really sketchy limo driver that lets underage kids drink. That's a bad thing. But I heard that happen.
But where we live, anywhere where you want to go to eat that would be like sort of fancy for prom is an hour drive.
True.
So, there's like no middle area.
That's true. And let's be honest, I don't think there's a lot of businesses anymore that are doing limo rentals. I don't know of any. So
I don't either. We have a bus.
Maybe we should.
People always rent the bus.
Maybe we should do a limo service. You want to start that as a side hustle? We'll put the Your Town logo on it. Or maybe the Beard Law Studio. All right. We're probably not going to do that. But either way, despite all of this, to recap, he had to get dropped off, couldn't go to the amusement park. Jeff was determined to attend the prom, and he leaves the house around 5 to head to prom. The next morning, though, members of the Olive Branch Church were concerned when Pastor Bob didn't show up for Sunday service.
So did he go on foot?
From what I understand, he showed up in a vehicle to prom. Went to the amusement park as if everything was good.
Okay.
They get in the fight. Everybody assumes at that point the fight's over. Maybe the fight wasn't even talked about. All I know is Jeff and Darla and their friends, they're at prom.
Okay.
But he showed, obviously he had a good time. He danced. He laughed. He got there. Took some pictures. Not a care in the world. But again, something terrible was about to unfold. Members of the church, they don't see Pastor Bob. A few parishioners. That's where we're going to go. Yeah. They actually show up to the Pelly residence to check on the family, because, hey, why aren't you here? That's not typical. What they discovered was absolutely horrifying. Bob, Dawn, and Dawn's 2 children, Janelle and Jolene, were found shot to death in their home. The scene was gruesome. It was clear that the family had been ambushed. Bob and Dawn were found in their bedroom, and the girls were discovered in the basement. Investigators determined that the murders had occurred somewhere between 5 and 5:30 the previous evening. Naturally, Jeff, he does become a person of interest. He was the only family member unaccounted for at the time of the murders. Police speak to Jeff, and he maintained his innocence. He said he had left the house to pick up Darla and go to the prom, and he had spent the entire evening with her and other friends. Despite his alibi, there were inconsistencies. Witnesses reported seeing Jeff at their house later than he initially slated. Further investigations revealed that Jeff had the opportunity to commit the murders before heading to prom. The time window was narrow, but absolutely possible. Police then find several pieces of circumstantial evidence. For example, the family's answering machine had been tampered with, presumably to delete a message that could have placed Jeff at the scene. Additionally, Jeff's behavior on prom night and the following days raised suspicion. He seemed unusually calm, though, for someone who had just lost his family in such a very brutal manner. Yet despite the suspicions, there wasn't enough concrete evidence to charge Jeff at the time. the case goes cold. Jeff tried to move on with his life. He relocates, he marries, starts a new chapter. Another cold case of a brutal murder with not enough evidence. Thank goodness for technology, right? At least when it comes to murders.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know about kids and prom and technology, but that's a whole different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, the shadows of your past are sometimes hard to escape. In 2002, remember, this was 89, now we're in 2002. Cold case investigators reopened the Pelly case. Advances in forensic technology and a fresh perspective on the evidence, they lead to a breakthrough, Meg. They re-examine the physical and circumstantial evidence, focusing on the timeline and Jeff's possible motive. In August 2002, Jeff Pelly was arrested and charged with the murders of his family. The prosecution argued that Jeff had killed his family in a fit of rage over his father's strict rules in the argument about prom night. They painted a picture of a young man who felt trapped and lashed out in the most violent way imaginable. A lot of stuff that I read, he actually, not to get into too many details, but viewer discretion advised. Apparently, there was a family safe with guns, grabbed a shotgun, and was able to commit the murder, shower, clean evidence within 25 minutes.
I was just trying to work out that time frame in my head.
That's what, and it might end up in the notes a little bit earlier, but I wanted to throw that in there because I kind of saw you like doing some math in your brain over there, and I was like, yeah, apparently it was when 25 minutes was able to do all that. And I feel weird saying was able to do all that. You know what I mean? It just seems too, I don't know, disgusting either way. But they go to the trial, July 2006, so 4 years after the conviction and everything like that. They re-circumstance it. The defense argues that the evidence was purely circumstantial and that Jeff had no history of violence. They pointed out the lack of physical evidence directly linking Jeff to the murders, like fingerprints, DNA, any of that stuff. But despite these arguments, the prosecution's narrative of a troubled teenager overwhelmed by anger resonated with the jury. On July 21st, 2006, Jeff Pelly was found guilty of 4 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 160 years in prison. Throughout the entire investigation, and everything, whether it's time in jail, every interview that I've seen, obviously he has maintained his innocence throughout this, and the case remains controversial. Some believe that justice was served, while others argue that the evidence was insufficient to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. And I mean, you have to imagine, we've seen some cases where somebody goes to jail, had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, they find somebody, or it just never goes on, never goes solved. Just
right.
It is wild. And it's one of these things. I mean, obviously the son, maybe he has motive, maybe he doesn't, but there's just no evidence. I don't understand.
Right. You would think like they would have to dispose of his clothes that he was wearing,
Mm-hmm.
all that. Like,
yeah. I mean, there was some things, obviously the interviews, the stories, but the concrete evidence is just kind of like, you know what I mean?
right.
It's wild. It's wild to think about. But then again, you're in a very small town, not a lot of violence, not a lot of murder. It seems pretty obvious. They get in there and hormonal teenagers don't think, they react. And it just kind of seems, and like I said, I'm not obviously a lawyer. I'm not a jury member. I have been to jury duty several times, was never picked, probably for the best. Or, you know what I mean? Am I in the law? But it seems like sometimes I feel like you can use your brain and be like, this one makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
But again, just a weird one in the 80s. But I feel like now is a good time to let's wrap up this episode. And obviously, we're left with some questions that we just kind of talked about. Was what truly happened in that house? Was it a fit of anger? Did Jeff kind of just go crazy? You know what I mean? And just kind of react instead of think it over? Was justice served? Or maybe did the system fail Jeff?
I want to know how far away he was from the prom.
That's a very good question.
Like his house.
From where the prom was?
Yeah.
Let's ask the Googles. How far was Jeff Pelly house from prom? That's a very good question. Ooh, First thing that pops up 3 years ago was a Reddit post that said Jeff Pelly probably didn't murder his family. A lot of things in there.
Right. Because if he only had 25 minutes, he still has to have drive time to go pick up Darla too.
Yep.
And I'm sure her parents wanted to take pictures.
And I'm not sure what time. I never found anything that said what time the prom started.
Oh, I thought it said he got there at 5:30. Something like that.
5 or 5:30, and they think that the whole thing started at 5 and he had an alibi around 5:30. So they were saying that the window was very tight for him to, kill 4 family members, clean up the scene as clean as obviously it is, you know what I mean, without potential shell casings, a weapon,
or him leaving
murder.
His evidence.
Yeah, no evidence, cleaning up, going to prom. So, but who knows? You know what I mean? You get caught in a moment as a teenager. Maybe you convince old Darla this is the story. Rinse, repeat. Who knows? Because it did say, and there was some reports, that neighbors and people did see him at the house after 5, way after 5. So I was quickly looking really quick. I did not see anything where it said, like the house was from here to there, but maybe we'll try to do a little bit of some research on there, do a follow-up on yourtown.com in the episode note, because I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but if you go to yourtown.com, each episode is listed. You can listen to it right on the website. There's a description, a recap, everything that goes on. Maybe we'll try to, update a couple extra descriptions and we'll find some answers. What do you think about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just an interesting thing. I mean, like I said, we could go on and on. It kind of sounds like the Rock on Moana. We could go on and on. But I feel like we try to wrap this up and within 20 minutes give you the story, give you the finer details. But if you guys want longer episodes, more details where, we have questions like this, maybe myself and Meg can bring them to you. But so just kind of looking at here, there's another quick thing. This is on the southbendtribune.com around 4:35 on the day of the dance. Some friends of Jeff stopped by the Pelly house to take pictures and noticed the 17-year-old was wearing a pink shirt and blue jeans. The friends left right before 5, and Jeff was next seen at a local gas station around 5:20, where he got help fixing his car. Jeff then drove to his girlfriend's house to change into his tuxedo and go to the dance. And apparently a friend of Bob and Dawn drove by the Pelly house sometime after 5:30 when the couple did not show up to a pre-planned gathering. The friend testified the Pellies' cars were in the driveway, but all the curtains were shut and the doors were locked. And apparently Jeff Pelly's girlfriend's mother commented how she was surprised his dad was letting him go with his friends to the Great American Amusement Park in Chicago because he had a 2-day pass from Pelly prison. So that says how things were pretty rough in that house, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Pelly prison. But again, there was no forced entry in the house. They did find a small load of clothes, including a pink and blue shirt and blue jeans in the washing machine. But a test of the washing machine cylinder failed to determine whether it actually had blood in it.
Huh.
But the jeans were definitely washed, and there was reports that it was there.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, Bob did keep a 20-gauge shotgun that everybody kind of presumed was the murder weapon on a gun rack in the master bedroom, but they didn't find any shell casings, or the gun was never found. There was no bruising on Jeff's shoulder from potentially shooting, multiple times, but that's in the article. I mean, I've done skeet shooting. I've never had a bruise from that, whether it was a 12 or a 20 gauge, but unreal. But either way, 160 years. And the reason that we kind of brought it up is there's a lot of talk, kind of like we did on last week's episode, of potential parole and, will he get out? Will he remain in jail for obviously not the full 160 years, but is he going to stay there and serve life? But we'll let you know. We'll keep you updated, or, open the Googles, type it in, Jeff Pelly trial and, probation and all that stuff. And we'll be able to see what happens. Unreal. Mm-hmm. But all right, that's an episode. Hopefully prom season is over for all you other parents, because it is a sigh of relief. And Meg is sleepy as well as the prom, because they didn't get home till after 5 a.m. from the all-night party. But exhaustion is temporary, unlike this podcast that hopefully will live forever. So
the memories are worth it.
Absolutely. And hey, next week I want to find a topic because we might be recording live from the Beard Laws mobile studio at a remote location. And as mentioned a couple of weeks ago, maybe we get the one, the only Pat Frazier on the podcast. So we got to come up with a cool topic. So you all have right now, from the time you're listening this beautiful Monday, or maybe it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to drop a comment of what we should go over with the one and only Pat Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
So get thinking, Meg.
Maybe we could even get some extra guests.
Ooh, maybe some extra guests. If that is, then we need a bigger audio interface and some more mics. But either way, we can't thank you enough. That's all we got. You got anything else?
Nope.
All right. Hopefully you guys have a good rest of the week. That's all we got. Okay, bye.
Goodbye.